Hi, Karawong here. One of the most well-known companies on Head-Fi would have to be ALO Audio. From way back, Ken Ball, the founder, has started making aftermarket cables for headphones. Being one of the first, he has become one of the most well-known in the industry. However, a couple of years ago, he branched out into making portable headphone amps, starting with the first RX model and, most recently, the balanced portable RX Mark III and International. While he wasn't first to make a balanced portable amplifier, his amps have been very well received by people wanting a portable amp capable of doing justice to full-sized headphones, which is something that's normally quite a challenge for a portable amp. However, before I talk about the PanAm specifically, I want to talk a bit about one of the portable amps, the Continental. Now in its third iteration, it's a portable tube amp that uses the sub-miniature Thompson 6111 tube. Though very well received as a portable amp, some of Ken's customers asked him to make a desktop amp, and the PanAm is in essence a desktop version of the Continental. However, while the Continental uses sub-miniature tubes, the PanAm uses inexpensive 6J1 tubes. And by inexpensive I mean seriously so. A pair of Mallard tubes only set me back $9 plus shipping on eBay. Most importantly, the PanAm also has a DAC built in, so like the Woo Audio's WA7 I talked about earlier, it's a one-stop shop for computer-based listening. And that isn't the only trick it has up its sleeve, however. Allow me to show you. Now, here it is, the PanAm. As you can see, it's not a particularly big unit. It's not a lot bigger than your regular portable amp, but it is somewhat bigger because not only does it have larger tubes, but it also has a DAC built inside. So like the Woo Audio WA7 I talked about in my last video, you plug in your headphones, plug in the power, plug in your computer into the USB port, and away you go with a neat little amp for your full-sized headphones or IEMs or whatever. However, that's not the only trick up its sleeve. Now, by default, the PanAm comes with this wall-wart power supply. Now, if you know anything about amps, you'll probably be familiar with the expression that what you hear from an amp is basically you're listening to the power supply. And by that, I mean what an amp does is it takes power and it takes a signal and it amplifies that signal with both together. So the resulting signal that comes out is a combination of the quality of the power and the quality of the signal coming through, and that's what you hear. So that means not only does the quality of your music become important, but the quality of the power coming out becomes important, because any distortion in that power is what you'll hear in the final result. So in that regard, these little wall-wart power supplies aren't particularly fantastic when it comes to providing good power for an amp. So ALO offers not one but two different optional power supplies. The first of those is called the Gateway. It comes in this box. That is the same size as your PanAm amp, and to show you what that is, allow me to flip it round, it becomes obvious. Full size power input and higher quality 12 volt output. So if I stack these together and I grab one of the little umbilicals that come with the Gateway power supply, there you have basically a higher quality desktop amp than the PanAm is by default, with that better power supply. Now, the other trick up its sleeve is that the PanAm can be used as a transportable amp. How does it do that? That's where the second power supply comes in. This is the Passport. Same size as the Gateway and the PanAm, but flip it round to the back and you have 12 volt input and 12 volt output. Well, if it's charged, you only need to use the output because this is a battery power supply. So, like the Gateway, let me flip them round. If I unplug the Gateway and plug in the Passport, we have a transportable, battery-powered amp for your full-sized headphones. And if I don't drop it and flip this on, you can see, maybe just see the orange light come on, and you might just be able to see the tubes start to glow. Now, that unit doesn't use a lot of power. Actually, the tubes don't by any means get hot enough to burn your fingers. But if you have something like one of the new MacBook Airs that'll run half a day to a day on battery power, you can basically have a battery-powered portable rig you can sit outside and listen to without having to plug in at all, making this a very handy unit for travelling with. So, last but not least of its features is the DAC. Now, lately high-res audio has become popular, and the PanAm does cater for that as well. The USB input uses a 10er chipset, which not only allows CD quality which is 44.1 kilohertz. It also allows 48 and 2496 kilohertz high-res files to be played directly through this and through to your headphones. My only gripe with the DAC in this is that it doesn't have 88.2 file support, and some HD Tracks files which were taken from SACD masters are 88.2, for example. So for that on my computer I have to have software that upsamples them to 96 kilohertz to use with the PanAm. But otherwise, still a very versatile little unit. And if you have something like a high quality DAP or whatever you want to use instead of the USB input for that, like you don't want to take your computer with you but just take this and headphones, it has two optional inputs as well as the USB. Your full-sized RCA sockets for plugging into a regular DAC or CD player or the like, and a mini jack, which is very handy for using just a portable digital audio player and a mini-to-mini connector. So you can actually make a fairly neat transportable unit out of the PanAm. And you select those, of course, with this knob on the left. And of course, however you want to set it up, if you want to stack them all together in your office and use the battery power only, sometimes you have a variety of umbilicals that come with it. 3 with each of the passport and the gateway, short, medium, which can reach up to, and a long one if you want to put them side by side. So how you set this up is, of course, entirely up to you. And last but not least, a couple of neat little aluminium tube covers, if I can get them to slip on, to protect the tubes. Now, I don't have it here, but you can also buy a special carrying case for this entire unit and fit it into the carrying case to take with you when you go travelling. And if you need to pop out the tubes, they pop out very, very easily. There's very little effort required, just a little bit of a wiggle and a nice straight push down to get them in and out. And like I said before, on the web you can buy the tubes for this amp for as little as $9 a set. And the $9 set, as I said, were a set of Mullards, and I can't remember, I think it wasn't much more for a set of Voshkods, and both of those seem to be the most popular tubes. Now, last but not least, the sound. Now, I'm not the first person to say it, but the sound quality from this is very good. It's good enough to power your planar magnetic headphones such as your Audeze LCD2s, LCD3s, Hi-Fi Mans, not your HE6s, it's not got enough power for that. But considering how relatively low power it is, I mean, even using the gateway, it doesn't get hot enough for the tubes to burn your fingers. It still does a remarkably good job. It was only, in fact, with the planar magnetics and complex music, with the volume turned right up, that things started to compress and the amp started to run out of steam. I didn't have such a problem with the HD800s, for example. They sounded fantastic whatever I did, basically. I think it's just the planar magnetics which show up its limits as an amp. But if you're not listening to, if you're like me and you like get out the old Coltrane numbers, for example, which aren't particularly fast or complex or demanding, even with planar headphones, the sound is very easy listening, very good. It's not particularly tubey or anything. The amp itself is a tube hybrid. It's not just tubes, it's got a solid state section in there as well, like the Continental. So it does cater for an entire variety of headphones from IEMs up to, again, any full-size headphones you want to use with it. So that, in a nutshell, is ALO's PanAm gateway and passport system. And I think, I'm not sure if it's possible now, but if you bought any 2 of them together or all 3 of them together, you got some discount for buying the kit. I'm sure someone's going to ask me what do I recommend. I think it depends whether you want the transportable option. Both the gateway and passport are very good. I had a really hard time discerning which was actually better to listen with. I noticed that the PanAm used less power from the passport than it did the gateway. So I didn't notice much of an effect there on the headphones, but the tubes definitely ran cooler. If you are buying aftermarket tubes, I also noticed they made more difference if I was listening to planar magnetic headphones. They seem to be more affected by the different tubes than my HD800s did, which seemed to be affected less. So I definitely recommend going out and getting the Mullards or Voshkods or one of the other tubes and having a play around, especially considering how cheap they are. And, you know, as I said, they pop out very, very easily, very, very easy to handle and play around with. So there is the ALO Audio PanAm, and thank you for watching.